It says zeros of linear functions. The good thing is we already kind of know how to do this. First off, we did talk about this in a previous chapter, okay? What a function is. So there's a difference between a function and an equation. So I'm going to write something underneath them. I did the same thing the last time we talked about this also. So an equation, I can write y equals, and I can make it up, 3x plus 4. Now this guy, is he linear? Look at the variables. Is he linear? Okay, if he's linear, and then do you remember talking about the vertical line test? That's when we talked about functions the first time. If something can pass the vertical line test, then it's a function, so the function version of this guy is the same thing, except for we're going to write this, f parentheses of x, remember we call it f of x, equals 3x plus 4. So aren't they almost exactly the same? What's the only difference? Yeah, this guy and that guy. Well, the cool thing is, f of x, that's how you say it, is the same thing as y. So if I ever say f of x, they're really just saying y is. Okay, so you never have to confuse them. Okay, so now we've talked about linear functions. This is a linear function, right? Linear means it has to follow those rules we talked about, linear equations. Function means it uses this notation. It uses f of x instead of y. Now we don't know what zeros means. You're not talking about the number. Zeros is just a fancy word for saying find the functions, so it's only used when there's a function, x-intercept. I have a question for you. Do we already know how to find an x-intercept? Didn't we just talk about that? Right? It's not like it didn't just happen, yeah? So that's exactly what that means. So all we're going to do in this section is it's going to say find the zero of each function. Now, if it says by graphing, you do not have to graph. We are not there yet, okay? So we're just going to do the math way every single time. So no matter which, your homework is 10 through 20, it does say by graphing. You are not doing that. You are going to use math to figure it out. Well, last section, before this, when we reviewed, how did we find the x-intercept of an equation? Like this guy. This is your function, f of x equals 3x plus 4. I just brought it down. How do we find the zero of this? Again, this is like y. How do we find x-intercepts again? What did we just do? Connor. We made y 0. So what represents y here? All of this represents y. So we're going to make that 0. So it's going to say 0 equals the equation. Guess what? Every single time it's going to say 0 equals the equation. Every single time in this sentence. So now, what are we going to do to slowly get x by itself? Yep, basic solving skills. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So what is 0 minus 4? Negative 4 equals, I have a 3x. What happens with these 4s? They cancel out, right? Okay, so then I'm just left with negative 4 equals 3x. Is x alone yet? How do I get rid of 3 times x, Jesse? Yep, divide both sides by 3. So now I'm going to write x equals, because these 3's cancel out, so x is left over. Can this make a whole number? Negative 4 divided by 3? No. What's the fraction answer going to be? Negative 4/3, exactly what it says. Most of the time, whatever you're dividing is the right answer. So if it says find the 0, look, that's it. Done. Unless the numbers are both even and they can be reduced, yes. Yes. And then, like Jesse remembered, because he has not been here for a while, he did remember second PRB will give you that correct fraction. Okay, now let's try another. That's all we're doing, right? So f of x equals, how about this guy? 4x plus 8. Again, it says find the 0 of each function. We're not graphing, we're just going to find the 0. What do we do every time? We're going to put 0 in for what? F of x. This one's actually easier, right? Because 0 always goes in the same spot. Every single time we do this, we're always going to add or subtract first. What are we going to move first? The 8. Subtract 8 from both sides. Risa, 0 minus 8 is negative 8. Bring down your 4x. Katie, how do I get x by itself? Divide both sides by 4. You see how I left my x there because you don't divide by a variable. Derek, what's my answer? Close. There you go. Negative 2. You do not do a y-intercept if it says find the 0. If it says find the 0, we only care about the x-intercept. So you have to read the instructions. Nope, it's either it'll say find the x and y-intercept or it'll say find the 0. There's no fancy word for y-intercept. This is the only fancy word we got. They also use this word. They also call it a root. It also means the same thing. So if they say find the root, that also means find the x-intercept. But in this book, we always use 0. On the state test, we use 0. Okay, now let's look at this equation. This one looks weird. F of x equals 7. That's it. That's my entire equation. What's different about this equation, Katie? She went, huh? There's no x in the equation, is there? If there's no x in the equation, can you have an x-intercept? No. This one's the easiest one you've ever had in your life. If there's no x in the actual equation, because this represents y, right? You just write no 0, because you're not going to have one. Isn't that like the easiest thing you've ever seen? Yeah? That's not hard at all? That's all right? It's just, again, practicing your basic math skills. We can do this. Good. I'm going to stop the shortest recording I've ever had in my entire life. And you're going to do some on the board. Okay? Katie, move your head for a second.